All right, we'll go ahead and begin. All right, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here for our webinar. My name is Denise Dubrovic, and I am the principal on the Winnetka campus, and I will be co-hosting, facilitating tonight's presentation on the schedule. I also have joining us two of our senior students. We wanted to make sure that we had representation from students and wanted them to join us to ask questions. They've also solicited some questions from some of their peers. So Kenny, can you take your mute off a little bit here quick?
Sure.
Okay, Kenny Dolan, can you just share a little bit about what you're doing at New Trier?
Hi everyone, I'm Kenny Dolan and I am the student council president for next year. And it's just a very fun experience to be joining everyone tonight and answering and asking a bunch of questions to see what the future of New Trier would look like.
Great, thanks Kenny. And then we have Kat Cohen. Kat?
Hi, I'm Kat. I'm the vice president of student council or student body. And yeah, I'm excited to be helping ask some questions of the students. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks both for being here tonight. Then we also have Dr. Sally, who I will introduce in just a moment here, and he can say his hello. I wanted to do a couple of housekeeping things to make sure that you're clear on how you can participate as a webinar. Please use the Q&A, and that will be where I will be pulling questions from throughout the evening. So please use that as a way to share your questions. We are recording the session, so once the recording is completed, we'll probably add that on our website sometime this week, hopefully by tomorrow. So we'll be sharing that out. If you know of someone that couldn't make it tonight, please refer them to our website. And then I'd like to introduce Dr. Sally. Paul.
Great. Denise, thanks. And Kat and Kenny, how does it sound being a senior, right?
Yeah, that's good.
It feels like freshman year started like a week ago.
Yeah, it's so scary.
Yeah, well, good. Thanks for being on here, and thanks to everybody for being on here to talk a little bit about the schedule and fall reopening. I think is really the broader topic. A lot of work has gone on. You'll hear a lot of information tonight. In one respect, we maybe should have called this sort of fall reopening 101 so that we can have a 102 and a 103 as we get more information. But certainly we'll continue to answer questions throughout the summer as more information comes to pass, because there's a lot of information that we still don't know. And you'll hear a little bit about that. What I'm going to ask Denise, Kenny, and Kat is that if at any moment you think something needs some clarification, you have a question, please just jump in, okay? And as you get questions that are appropriate for what we're talking about, then just at any moment, we'll make this as sort of casual and make sure we get to as many questions as we can. So let me start with a little bit of an introduction to what we've been doing to give you some sense of what we've done so far. So this is our roadmap to reopening, and we have 8 different committees that are working on various things. So one of the things that we'll talk a lot about tonight is we'll talk about schedules, and we'll talk about teaching technology and professional development. But every one of these committees is really important and is working on what we do for next year. So staff and student mental health and support's very important. Logistics, health, well-being, and screening are tightly related, as well as talking about extracurricular activities and just general communication that we need to make sure is strong during this period of time of unknowns and of change. So those 8 committees have been working for a while on the plans and trying to answer some of the questions that people have, that we have, to try and make sure we can do our best to open school in the fall with as many kids as we possibly can for as long as we possibly can. That really is our goal. And I'll talk just a little bit about that now, that we have these considerations of reopening school. So first is absolutely the health and well-being of student, staff, and families. That is number one, that we need to make sure that the environment that they come into is safe, that our teachers are teaching in a safe environment, and that, we do everything we can to do so. If we can't ensure a healthy and safe environment, it's going to be difficult for us to open, but that's why we've been working so hard to make sure we can get kids into school. Number two is effective teaching and learning. And I think we all could imagine that there might be so many constraints put on a school that we can't actually effectively teach and learn at the school. What we know is that we want kids in, and we want to build those connections with teachers and students. We want students to be around other students learning together. All that is really important. So we're focused on effective teaching and learning as well. And a lot of our work is going into that over the past number of weeks, as well as this summer. And then our other considerations are simply mandates and guidance that come from the Illinois State Board of Education. They come from the Illinois Department of Public Health, and they come from the governor as well, in terms of what constraints we have, what things we must do, where we have some leeway, and that is constantly changing. We'll hear more information. I have heard there'll be more guidance coming out from ISBE by the end of this week. That may or may not be the case. We just have to be patient and wait and see when that comes out. We'll continue to monitor that, revise our plans as needed, and use any flexibility that we're given to meet our goals of having a safe environment where we have effective teaching and learning in school as much as possible. It is a very complicated matter, and that's why it's taking us time to keep working through the issues. You'll have some questions, and you'll hear some things that we don't know the answers to yet, but we are aware of them, and we are working on them. And some of it's wait and see till we hear more from the state, and other ones are just going through scenarios and figuring out what's best for our school. So the four basic ideas here, these are almost really modes of operation more than scenarios. These are the four ways we might operate next year. So the first one is all in school, and that would be absolutely wonderful. What we do know, however, is that that's not realistic for the school year, this coming year. We'll have some students and some staff who just need to be at home. They need to be teaching and learning from home. And we're going to accommodate that. They just, for any number of reasons, underlying health conditions and the like, cannot come into school. The second option, the second mode of operation is the hybrid mode, where we have some students that are in school and some students learning remotely, and we cycle through that in a particular way. The number of different ideas are being generated around that. Because what we want to do is make sure we have a full year of curriculum. We don't want to leave some students behind. We don't want half the curriculum. So we're talking about a number of different options within each discipline of how we do that effectively. The third one is all remote, where we can't have anybody in school because of the health situation, and we have to operate remotely. What we know we're doing now is building a really robust remote learning plan for our students if we need to be in mode of operation 3, because that's going to work for mode of operation 2 as well, where some are in school and some are remote. And what's most likely is that we'll be switching between 1, 2, and 3 at different points during the year. There'll be different phases, and we want to be ready and flexible enough so that we can adapt to those.
Paul?
Yeah.
Real quick, I think Kenny has a question, and you mentioned the hybrid be every other day in attendance, every other week. Can you just clarify?
Yeah, Kenny?
Yeah, so for a hybrid, how would that be split? Would it be randomized? Would it be per grade? Or how is the split going to look like?
Good question. So it's actually a pretty complicated problem. I think all of us can imagine. There are 3,000 kids at the Winnetka campus who take all kinds of different schedules, and 1,000 kids at Northfield. So what we've done is we've actually done some data analysis around around the selections that students have made. And what we have to ensure is that no particular class has too many kids in it, and that there aren't too many kids in the cafeteria and in the hallways. So we have to make sure we're able to split, basically split the student body in half. So it can't be all sophomores in one day would be difficult. Our English 2 classes would be full, and we'd have to be looking at different spaces and ways of dealing with that. But if we do things like, you know, we're already broadcasting our lessons from Zoom. We've experienced that, so we have that option as well. So there are still lots of considerations, but one idea is simply that we'd have half the student body in for a week, and the other half would be at home doing remote learning. Then we'd flip-flop. So then the students would come in who are at home would come in for a week. There are many options that we're considering with that, so I don't want to promise any one thing at this point. But we're not going to be doing sort of, some schools are talking about an AM, PM schedule. We're not doing that for sure. We're going to talk through the schedule that we'll be doing next year. Does that help? Does that
Yeah,
work?
that makes sense.
Okay.
And then one more question, Paul, with the option 1, all in school, some students and staff at home.
Yep.
Can you just speak to how we'll be able to identify and know which students potentially may not be able to come to school?
Right.
That
Well,
option?
Yeah, well, we'll be relying on communication with parents to know what the situation is in their family. And we will be accommodating for those students and families that just need their student to be at home. For staff, it's the same situation. Our staff have many situations in which they need to can't be in school. We have a quite complicated situation related to our teachers, which is that our teachers have kids in schools all over the area, some within our township, and we're working closely with our sender schools on this, but many outside of New Trier Township. So if their kids aren't in school, we know we have childcare issues on top of any other health issues that they might have. So we'll be, for students, we'll be listening to parents and talking to parents, asking them to contact us as we get closer to August and our opening date. We'll want to have clear communication with families about what the situation is with their student and what they'd like to do in terms of learning remotely. We will have that option of learning remotely all year long. It's just going to have to be something that we accommodate. So we're getting ready for it.
So part of Paul, the moving in the next direction then is really our schedule, right? The fundamental part of our school. And so there's been a lot of discussion, with our faculty and many committee groups looking at the schedule. Can you, talk a little bit about the goals of this particular schedule that we'd like to share with their families tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think the other part is certainly the feedback that we've received.
Surveys
and the like. So that's great.
Right.
So let me talk through that just a little bit. So first of all, we needed to focus on what our goals are for the committee. And what we knew is that we wanted it to work in all the modes of operation or scenarios that we just talked about. We think that's important for a couple reasons, and you'll hear some of these points a few times tonight. But we think that's important because we need our teachers and course committees and departments to be able to plan. And planning for different types of schedules is just different. The pace and the depth in which you cover certain things in the curriculum looks different depending on the schedule. So we wanted to be able to have our departments plan around that. In addition, we want to minimize any of the confusion. We want to minimize any of the stress of transitions that might happen going from one phase to another. So if we're used to sort of a blue-green day and a Treveon day, then that's still the way it's going to be when I come back to school or if I have to be at home. So that was important to us. We also, in the short time we had to sort of really look at options, we did not want to reduce student opportunities. And that's for courses, and that's for social emotional supports and other supports as well. So it's important to us not to have to go to families and say, well, because of this change in schedule, you're going to have to not take a class or the like. So that was important. The other thing that is important is for us to meet the needs of all students, and that includes our students with IEPs. So how does that structure work within a block schedule for the support that they need to keep their learning moving forward? We also know that the situation that school is pretty stressful. We've heard that for a number of years. I don't know if Kenny and Kat would agree that it's stressful, and they hear it from their friends. But we want to watch out for the well-being for our students and staff while we keep education moving forward. And so that was one of the pieces that we cared about. We also wanted to keep the culture of the student-teacher interactions, which is just central to what Nurture is. And it's difficult remotely. I think we probably got better at it over the quarter, and if we're remote next year, we'll be even better because we just need to keep that those connections up. We also have commuting teachers and students that either teach on both campuses or have opportunities to learn at both campuses, so we need to do that, as well as providing professional development opportunities for our staff. This is a quick shift. We made a quick shift last year into sort of emergency remote learning on, turned on a dime. We have a lot of good planning going on now, but that planning will need to continue. So those were our goals.
So,
Yep.
So we ended up on a block schedule,
Yep.
right, with a Treveon day.
Yeah.
So can you just talk a little bit? I mean, I know the slides got that, but just please, the block schedule and some of the advantages and disadvantages of a block.
And Denise, you've been on a block schedule before. You've experienced that in your professional career. So, and we have a number of teachers in Nurture who have. So one of the things that we did is we did consider the 9-period day, and with the criteria I just laid out, it didn't meet those criteria, especially as we think about either a hybrid or remote learning scenario. The demands of a 9-period day on both students and staff are significant. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the schedule. The characteristics that you end up with in a block schedule are listed here, some of the ideas. One is that there is an embedded lunch within a period, especially in a school as large as ours, where we need to have 3 lunch periods. The only way you can really do that in the block schedule is to embed lunch within a period. I'll talk about that. Some of these and some of our considerations were around, should we have skinny periods? And that's just the term they use to be a shorter period that meets every day. Should we have skinny days where every class meets? And you'll see Treveon days are one of those. Many of these also have embedded time for different types of programming. So you see the note there on X block. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, which is we have opportunities for staff professional development, which will be really important, is always important. We also have that time that can be for student supports and other student programs. I know that some of the questions that came up, if you're free, can you leave, and will anything ever be scheduled? And we're still working on that. We'll talk some more about that in a little bit. But an example would be, we could have an extended advisor room in an X block instead of moving the whole schedule around. That if we need to do extended advisor room for any number of reasons, we could have that in an X block. And we know that we're building on our experience with our blue-green days and the feedback that we receive from parents. So some of the advantages in a block schedule is the increased focus on a fewer number of tasks and subjects each day. The block of time that in the schedule right now is 70 minutes, gives an opportunity to increase depth of learning compared to 40 minutes. And that is an advantage. It's different, and that's one of the things that our departments are working with, thinking about what are the important concepts in the curriculum, and how can we go deeper into those concepts in this structure.
I think, Paul, can I just add in that?
Yeah.
I think one of the misconceptions is that it's not about just teaching more, right? It's that idea of going deeper. And part of what our staff is doing now and then over the summer is really looking at their curriculum.
Yeah.
What is it that I need to teach? What is it that I like to teach? And just sort of really trying to really go through their curriculum in a meaningful way to prepare for the block.
Yeah, another thing that I noticed also was with the longer class periods, a lot of the times when we had shorter periods, we got cut off by the bell right when we started getting into a discussion. So with longer periods, it would allow us to continue the discussion without the transition time of leaving and getting into class.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The number of times, and the next bullet, reduce student and staff stress is something that's reported by many schools that go to block schedules, and many schools just use block schedules as opposed to a traditional one like ours. But our students typically might take 7 classes, and during the day, they're switching their focus and their thinking 7 times during the day to what we hope is really deep thinking in that subject, right? Deep engagement in that subject. And that in and of itself is taxing. Our students do it very well, for sure. But I think that certainly is one of the contributors to stress amongst our students. And again, before COVID. And then at night, they'll have homework in 5 classes each night. So they have their 7 classes, they probably have an extracurricular, they're just trying to spend some time with their friends as well. They're trying to spend some time with their family. They have 5 classes of homework each night. I'll show you, I'll talk through a little bit of data in a little bit. It's not surprising that our kids end up pushing everything to the evening, and then those evenings can get very late as they try and finish their homework. In a block schedule, you have 3 to 4 classes a day, and you'll have homework in 3 to 4 classes each night, and you'll see what the alternating schedule looks like. And in addition, I think a good thing is that all students have lunch every day, that the lunch is embedded within a period so that every student will have a break. And we know that for all kinds of reasons, starting with learning and continuing into social emotional wellness, that matters for students. So those are some of the advantages. Let me talk about some of the disadvantages and then see if the crew here has any questions. So what we do know with the block schedules, there's a decrease in contact days and often in contact hours, that when you talk about a block schedule, you don't have class every day. So in a typical 180-day school year, which is a good number to use, you might only see your teacher 90 instead of 180 days if you go every other day. So there are lots of different block schedules that manage that differently, but there are a decrease in contact days and potentially in hours. It also tends to, in addition to increasing the depth of the curriculum, it has a tendency to decrease the breadth of curriculum as well, which is a careful analysis our departments need to do about each course. That is not necessarily a hard and fast rule, but it's certainly something that's reported. And then the other disadvantages is this just a new rhythm for everybody, that the rhythm of the week is going to feel different than it used to. I guess for our freshmen, they won't know anything different, but there's just a whole transition there as well. And we'll be talking more about freshman issues next week on a webinar for our incoming freshman class. But homework patterns will be different, rhythm of the week will be different. How do you seek extra help? So these are things that we know we have to work through in order to make it be as successful as possible for our students.
I'm seeing a lot of questions about early bird on whether it would be every day or on what day it falls under.
Yep. So we'll go through that. Yep. Good question.
I have a question too. Would if we only have class like every other day, so would the homework be due the next time we have class, or would it be like up to the teacher?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good question. So the pattern for homework is going to be similar in that your homework's due when you have class, right? So the night, whatever classes you have the next day, yeah, you might have long-term projects you're working on too, but the homework that's due is going to be homework in the classes that are the next day. So that's sort of that homework pattern that I think our students are so used to. Open the book and just go through all my classes, and I do boom, boom, boom. You'll have to get used to a little bit of a different pattern for that. And you know, I suspect for many reasons this is going to be more manageable for our students because you're not switching tasks so often at night as you're trying to do your math homework, then finish off your science lab, and you have to read a couple chapters in English. You'll have fewer things to focus on. I think that'll help engagement. We'll get to the early bird question in just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. No, you're good. Yep.
Yeah. So teachers, right? I mean, how are teachers preparing for this change? So we have a group that's working on this, and in fact, the group and a number of people just went through a professional development offering today on teaching within a block schedule. We're using our internal resources, we're using external resources to keep our professional development moving forward. But the group, which is led by Peter Tragos, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, and again, a wide representative committee is on it. And they're tackling two threads. One is remote learning, and to make sure we have a robust plan, but also the block schedule and how do we rethink curriculum and instruction to be effective there. So these are the 7 areas that they focused on. And I think it's really important that we talk about building relationships with students and creating communities of learning. You know, this is what learning's about. This is how good learning takes place, especially in high school. When you have those relationships with students, when you have a community that you're learning with, it's just different in remote learning. It's going to be different as we start out in a remote hybrid or maybe everybody in scenario. But our teachers are going to be focused on that, as well as our standards for effective Canvas courses. Certainly one feedback that we received loudly from our students especially is that, can we standardize some of these pieces so that I know where to go to find out what's due, what's going to be happening in class the next day, what the longer term assignments are. So we are working on what we're calling our standards of practice, remote learning standards of practice, and that involves our Canvas courses as well. And then it's creating routines, it's creating a feedback cycle, which is new and different in a block schedule every other day or 3 times a week, as you'll see in just a second, which just is different. And then what should assessments look like in this? So those are the areas they're focusing on. Anything else there, Denise?
No, nope. I think let's just get to the schedule. So let's imagine that we're all on campus.
Let's do that.
Okay? Let's do the best scenario possible. Since like what 80% of our parents in the survey said they want their kids in school.
Yeah.
We heard it loud and clear.
Yeah.
So let's imagine for a minute we're back at school.
Yeah. And
please go through. Yeah.
And we want all
we want our kids back. Yeah.
So this is the slide that we talked through and I showed at the board meeting last week, and it sort of gives a breakdown by the amount of time in each class. And one thing that we're still working on is the exact start and end time of those of the day. It's not going to shift dramatically. I'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But what you can see here is on each of the days, you'll see in period 5 on a Treveon day, period 3 on a blue day, and 8 on a green day, you'll see lunch and a class. So how that plays out in each person's schedule will be different in different periods. But that's the embedded lunch part of it. You can see on a green day, we have 9 periods in this schedule, which allows students to do everything they've done and expected to do next year. And that was one of our criteria. That includes SILC, that includes being a tutor, that includes any student supports that students receive. We'll be able to have that for all students. So that's the daily schedule. It might just be easier to look at a sample schedule though. So let's look at one schedule. Let me talk just a little bit about this. So this is actually a very typical schedule. This is what it would look like right now for many of our students. They take 5 core academics, they take kinetic wellness, they take an elective, they have lunch 5 days per week. They have 7 classes each day, homework in at least 5. I talked through that earlier. So this is a typical schedule a kid would have now. And again, lunch every day. Let me point out that the science lab here is one that currently meets 2 days a week. So that last bullet point really says, if we're going to make sure kids have a lunch, which I think is a reasonable thing for every kid and adult to have every day, have some time where they're downtime where they're eating lunch. Our students who have 7 classes per day have 3 free periods, if you don't count lunch, which for this student would be 7th period when they don't have lab. So yes, they have 4th period lunch. Let's give them lunch. They have 3 free periods, which is 120 minutes during the week, which means that our students, and again, very typical, have 24 minutes a day to get other things done. So they don't have to eat lunch because they did that. So that's good. And maybe there's some rejuvenation with that as well, which we hope. But they also need to see teachers. They need to collaborate with each other. They have homework to complete, tests to make up. They want to contribute to the school community with Silk or Math Reading and Writing Center tutor or some other student support that they have. So these are all things that our students are pushing into 24 minutes a day if they have a schedule like this. Okay, and again, this is a fairly typical schedule, 7 classes. Science gives that 8th period during 2 days of the 5 days currently. So we wanted to make sure that all students could have their opportunities, and we didn't reduce those opportunities. So what this looks like for this student, and let me point out just a couple of things. So the first thing that you might notice if you go back and forth between the 2 slides is that we actually reordered some of the classes, okay? And I'll talk about that in a couple of different ways, and a couple of things that we'll be looking out for. One of the reasons that we can reorder the classes and spread out the master schedule across all 9 periods is we have an embedded lunch. So when we had our typical schedule, 4th, 5th, and 6th with our lunch periods. On the Winnetka campus, 1,000 kids had to have 4th free or 5th. Everybody needed to have 4th, 5th, or 6th free in order to have a lunch. And of course, with the block schedule, that just plays out differently. But it also, because of that, created some conflicts where students couldn't actually get the classes that they really wanted because of the way the schedule was spread out to periods other than 4, 5, and 6. More classes are offered 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9 than 4, 5, and 6 because of lunch and using our resources efficiently. Now we can move that around. This is going to be better for students. This is going to be better for teachers and staff as well. So this particular student, again, 5 core academics. What used to be their lunch, we just made 2nd period in this example. Spanish, kinetic wellness, social studies, lunch, and free. So on the Treveon day, there's an embedded lunch. And because of the size of our school, we need 3 lunches, especially if we're trying to socially distance and do this in the right way. We're absolutely going to need 3 lunches. So every student will have a class, we'll have a lunch period, and then we'll have a free period in that time. That free period is, I think that's a good thing. I think our kids use that time very wisely. It allows some of the work to come from the evening into the school day when they have that free time. They have science and science lab. We're still working out all the details for science. Well, again, one of the unknowns that we're working on, we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then business ed and math, that's their Treveon day. Their blue day, they have 3 of their core academics on a blue day, English, Spanish, and social studies. They have 2 on a green day, science and math. So it provides that split. Their kinetic wellness is blue and their elective is on a green day. So it splits their schedule to provide, again, that increased focus on those classes and obviously the increased class time as well. The unscheduled time for students in this schedule is really about 60 minutes per day. So it actually more than doubles the free time that students have during the day, from 24 minutes to 60 minutes. And quite honestly, I think that's a huge help when we have students that have been ill and need to make up tests. When do you make up the tests? How does that end up compressing your day? This is a little bit looser and has more time for our students. So we think that's one of the big advantages of it.
Hey,
Everybody
Paul,
has 5 days a week. Yep.
can you go into Kat and Kenny's question? Because there's a lot of questions coming in about this scheduling of homework. I think when we went to a block in
Sure.
remote, I think that that was a piece. So Kenny or Kat, do you want to, I mean, this idea of, is it assigned, how is it assigned? So.
I was like thinking like what classes would be with the embedded lunch? Because like if you have like gym or like a science or dance, like it might be awkward to like have a break in the middle.
Right. Kat, that's a good question, and each department is figuring that. So I tell you what we won't do. We won't do lunch and then kinetic wellness. Promise. That really isn't going to go well. Or lunch and dance, right? I mean, those all those combinations. You know, each department is going to think through that, and what's going to be interesting as we go through this is that I've seen many comments. It's like, well, 70 minutes is kind of long. Are you going to give kids a break? Well, in 3rd or 8th period, you'll actually have that break embedded within it. So teachers will have to plan for that for sure. One of the things that I can imagine as a math teacher is I can picture how I would use that embedded lunch in a particular way in different classes. And so as I think about how we create that master schedule for math or any department, there'll be some that are more natural for that than others. But we're, again, working through that with the departments at this time. But
so the homework, the homework piece keeps coming up over and over. Just, it was ambiguous, I think, is what, you know, I think what I heard in some of my feedback from the parents and then in the survey. Just What does that look like?
Sure. So I think it's going to feel, I think it's going to feel more typical, except it's just not going to be every day. So at one point during remote learning, we said, turn something in every day by 3 o'clock so we know you did something. It's like, okay, we're over that now. And that the learning that your teacher creates will be one that's marked by each day you're in class. And between class, there's always work to do. There's homework to do. But if I'm in this English class where it's my first period, so Monday would be a Treveon day. I touch base with my teacher. We set up the week. We review some work that we had to do over the weekend. And my next assignment is due Tuesday. So I'm going to have some reading to do on Monday night to be ready for Tuesday. I might have to write something. The next time that I have work that will be due, I have Tuesday night, Wednesday night to get ready for my English class. So the homework, the next expectation when we'll be saying, what'd you learn? What questions did you have about that? Did you have any problems on your math homework? Would be on the Thursday, the blue day. So, I don't know if I'm explaining that very well.
Yeah, I think typically, my experience on a block is that when you're with your kids on, Monday, or let's say Tuesday on a blue day, I'll assign the homework, and that gives them Tuesday night and Wednesday night to complete it. And then if I assigned them something 2 weeks ago, and they want to complete it on the green night, that's fine too. I mean, it's just just that idea of giving them the homework on the evening.
That's right.
And not sending something else on. If I have a blue day, not on green day, say, oh, and you have something due tomorrow. You know,
Yeah.
that's not what we're looking at in terms of our staff.
In this schedule, your English paper or your annotations will not be due on Wednesday or Friday, right? They'll be due on Tuesday, Thursday,
Right.
when you have your English class.
Right.
I have a quick question about testing. So last year we had certain testing days where teachers could only assign tests on certain days. Would there be something similar with the new block schedule so that we know that we won't have a test in every class?
Yeah, so we're still working through that, Kenny. It's a really good question, and we're thinking through solutions. So one thing that's actually good about the block schedule is that you don't have every class every day. So especially if we can get to the balance of core academics that we're going to try and hit for kids. So this particular student has English, Spanish, and social studies on Tuesday and Thursday. Now, I still think we need to resolve the test day issue, but it will never be as bad as it could have been without test days in the 9-period day. On a green day, it's science and math, and our procedure last year was you could have 2 tests in 2 core academics on a day. The distribution of test days allowed that on some.
And then also, just a quick question, how would double periods that aren't science periods, for example, like IGS or dance lab or AS classes, be able to fit into the schedule?
Great question. So that too is going to actually be done by department, and I think we actually might end up seeing some experimentation on that this year. So there are some double period classes that are specifically double period for support. So for example, we have an Algebra 1 double period math class. There aren't many people who want to sit through 140 minutes of math, even like me who loves math. With that support, we would want to spread that out. So the double period might be 1 and 6 or 2 and 7. So you actually would have the class every day to support those students. Now we have a bunch of other classes that are like that. So American Studies, and they're talking about some of the American Study pairs are interested in doing a double period back-to-back with appropriate breaks. Others are interested in trying to divide them. So we're talking through that, and we'll keep everybody informed. I think dance is another one that is a double period class that we just need to be careful that it's just probably too hard to do double period dance for that long, and we wouldn't want to we would want to be careful about that. But again, the dance department will be working through that.
Wait, I have a question. Are you guys gonna like make sure that one day for students isn't like super light and one day is like packed with core classes? Because I feel like it could end up like one day you just have an elective and gym, and then the other day you have like all your core classes.
Yeah. We're gonna try. So and we certainly will respond to students and families that go, this is undoable. We're gonna have to work something out differently. What we're not going to do is, I mean, I think that this 3-2 split is reasonable. If someone said, I don't want science and math on the same day, we're not going to be able to accommodate that. That's just going to be too many changes. But we certainly want to make sure that the schedule feels balanced to kids as much as we possibly can. That's again another complicated solution, but we're going to look at it and work through it. We also won't say, we may have some students that go, give me all my core academic classes on one day, get it over with. And then we're not going to take that either. We're going to be trying to spread them out and balance the work across the week.
And with this new schedule, seeing the class periods are longer, would the overall school day still be from 8:15 to 3:25, or would it be extended or shortened?
Good question. So we're still working on that, and there are a lot of pieces to that to work through. Here's what I can say, and I think there's another slide that has this, but the questions on the table. We will not start any earlier than 8:10 on the Winnetka campus, 5 minutes earlier than we do now. We're not going to move any earlier than that. We think that starts to become detrimental. Early bird will start at its usual time. At the end of the day, it's going to be extended by at most 10 minutes. So that's sort of now the footprint that we're looking at. It may be less than that. Again, we need to think about, there's logistical things around bus routes, extracurriculars, and the like that we're still processing. But that's sort of the biggest change that would happen: 5 minutes early, 10 minutes later. So I don't know if Denise is.
I'm just looking, I'm trying to answer some of these questions.
Okay, great. There are only 132 of them, so.
Yeah, that's okay. So some of it, you know, like, so will teachers assign more homework since there will be longer periods? And I just, you know, I don't think there's a correlation between that. They have more time to do it, of course.
Yeah, I think that what our teachers are focused on, it's a fair question, and I certainly don't think I have a complete answer to it, but what our teachers are focusing on is the rhythm, the pattern, and the extent of the curriculum that we can successfully and reasonably get through. So it changes things in our curriculum. Again, it's that depth piece that allows us to really focus on and build out concepts that might be easier to build out now than with a 70-minute period than otherwise. I don't project that. I think overall this is going to be a schedule that reduces stress on students. That would be my answer to that. But we'll monitor as we get into the year. This is new for us, and we'll always monitor it and listen to our students and our parents. I have no doubt that as we get into the school year, we'll be surveying everybody to sort of ask how it's going and how we might tweak certain directions.
And about early bird, what would this look like? Would it be every day? Would it start earlier? Would it start later?
Yeah. So right now, the plan for early bird, and what we do with early bird is we try and match instructional time for classes within the school day as well, right? So right now, the way that it works is the early bird classes meet 5 days a week for 55 minutes. And that's about the same as what our classes meet during the school day. And that helps our teachers who are teaching multiple sections to have the same rhythm of the class and move the class along in the same way. Right now, it could be that Mondays are not an early bird day, that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are early bird days. But again, we're working with the science department and looking at the instruction that they want to make sure happens, and we'll have a more complete answer for that by the July board meeting when we present all the details to the board.
Paul, can you go to the schedule where you have a slide for students that have an IEP?
Yeah, let's jump to that real quick. So this first one here is a student who is interested in doing silk will have the opportunity to do that in the same way that they do now. And in addition, I think again that school day and the amount of time and focus on fewer things during the day, I think helps students even as they sort of fill up their day with some of these wonderful things. I'll come back to this one in a second. So let's talk about a student with an IEP. So here's a student with an IEP, 6 other classes. So they have 7 classes as well. This student also has a science lab, as you can see. So they're in the same situation as the other student. It's just that one of their classes is resource. And this is the way that we're working with the special ed department to serve those students. So there are 2 things that are important to think about here. One of those is that we have students in resource seminar and other student supports every day because that's really what they need. they need that check-in every day. They need to be working with a special educator every day. And so the block schedule in and of itself needs to be tweaked just a little bit so that we can meet their needs. The other thing we know is that that we think that a 70-minute resource class is going to be is excessive. That what you look at here during this second period, so this student has resource second period, and so they then in the block schedule will do resource for the first half of this period, and they will have free time. During seventh period, this actually is one that they were free, and so it may not exactly line up like this, but they will be able to have resource every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And again, the resource is a need for our students, and we're going to provide all the resource that they need. Some students do have their resource opposite science lab, and we're still going to be able to do that as well. So as we talk about science and science lab, when we talk about an extended science learning experience, you're talking about a 70-minute period and then a 35-minute block after that period. So the science lab time is actually divided science lab is 105 minutes of learning. And if you count the passing period, 110 minutes. Going to 140 or 145 minutes is too much. We think we lose effectiveness after about 105 minutes. So that's the way those science labs will be structured, which means that a student who has a resource opposite their science lab will still be able to do that as well.
So Paul, I think I'm looking at this. Okay, so on your Treveon day, I have science. I have 8th period science.
Yep.
And then I am free 9th period.
So we're still working that out with science, right? So we want to make sure that the science department, and this includes early bird, has it has the minutes that they need to work in the way the other departments are. Everybody's losing some instructional time. So we're still working on some of those pieces with science.
Okay.
This particular student would have free 7th period in their schedule, which was a green day free period, which would turn into a resource time for that student.
Okay.
Okay.
And then later in the week, can you just look at science again? So later in the week, there'll be 70 minutes, one block in the lab.
Yep.
With 35 minutes, half a block.
That's 105 minutes.
Right, in a classroom, could be before or after. And then the other class session in the week will be 70 minutes, one block in the lab.
Right. One block of 70 minutes. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things the science department has done, which I'm really happy about it was an interesting problem to solve, but they have really worked to maximize the amount of time that our students are in our wonderful science labs. And what that means, especially with a 70-minute block, the opportunity to have a lab experience on any given day now is there, as opposed to, when you had a 40-minute science period, it's just less likely that you could have a lab experience. So that's a nice advantage of this.
Yep.
Okay, what's next? I want to go back to this. So I just want to talk a little bit about this. Is that okay? And then, just keep throwing questions. Good. Okay, so this is the way at least one part of the year will look. And what this allows us to do is it really defines, we'll start in September, that Treveon days are Mondays. When we don't have school on a Monday, and we have a number of holidays, most of the holidays we take are on Mondays, we don't have a Treveon day. So as you look at September 1, 2, 3, 4, the next time you're in class is Tuesday Blue Day. And so you go back to blue, green, then we see all our students on Monday the 14th. The way that this works is there are a few glitchy parts in the year which we're still working out, but really we have Blue Day Tuesday, Green Day Wednesday, Blue Day Thursday, Green Day Friday. So we think that this is really helpful and provides some weekly stability while there are different structure on a Treveon day than on a blue or green day. It does provide some weekly stability, which we think is important. The other thing we think is important that a Treveon day does is it increases the student-teacher contact days. So you will see your teacher in every class 3 days a week. And that's about 20% more than if we just did a straight blue-green and sort of checkerboarded across the month. And we think that that's important. We think it's especially important on the freshman campus, but we think it's important for all of our classes and students. That's about the community building. That's about the student-teacher relationship, which especially early on, we want to make sure we can manage and develop. The other thing is that it provides some consistency of student supports as well as some of our programs. So we have some programs where that consistency of experience in the performing arts, I think would be one example of that, where having more contact days is better. This also provides us some flexibility for ISBE guidance. We're going to, again, continue to hear more. As you may know, they allowed districts to take district planning days during remote learning in fourth quarter. It might be, and I've heard some possibility that they will provide some district planning days for districts again this year, yet to be determined. If they do, the Treveon Day then becomes a way to put it in without disrupting the blue-green schedule. So we would be looking at that. And I think just in general, the Treveon Day provides us with increased flexibility as we manage throughout the year. So those are Treveon Days.
So, Paul, one of the other questions was just, classes like AH, these classes where there's 2 periods. I know you mentioned it with dance. I think, we've been working with our staff now on when would you schedule those? Are they back to back? Could it be a 1 and a 6 or,
Yeah, so I think that, and what I think we'll see is we're letting our departments work through with the teachers what we think is going to be best. So we will see some of those double period classes split for sure. I think we'll see others that go back to back. For anybody familiar with the IGSS program, they do go back to back to back. And so it can be very effective. It again is a different instructional and learning method or learning structure. So we have to work with that. But our departments are looking at that. If we do have back-to-back, we certainly will be providing ample breaks and just making sure that kids can stay engaged.
So Paul, another question that a couple have come up here is just this embedded lunch. What does it mean? Do kids get an extra free period? You just kind of maybe walk through that one more time, embedded lunch.
Sure. So
I think that was way up there, and
well, I think on this page I think I can talk through it.
Yeah.
So this is this student, and maybe you're right, Denise. Maybe if we go back to just look at
5 ABC, is it 10?
So here's the embedded lunch, right? So again, this is with a block schedule. You just can't assign a lunch period because the periods are different each day, and you'd have to assign multiple lunch periods to a kid, and it just doesn't work. So the way that you do that within a block schedule, for those schools that need multiple lunches, if we only needed 1 lunch period, we would do this differently, but we need 3 lunch periods even without social distancing, is we take 5th period on a Treveon Day and classes are designated as either A, B, or C. So that means they're teaching first, teaching in the middle, or teaching last. But this allows each kid to then have both a lunch period and a free period within that 110-minute block, because there's some passing time in there. So then we're going to have kids go to lunch when they're assigned lunch, especially during social distancing. So that's going to be something that we work through. On third period and eighth period, you will either have lunch or class or lunch, or there will be a set of third period classes and eighth period classes that have class, lunch, class, so that their time and break is in the middle with lunch. And this has been successful within a number of schools, number of area schools have used this structure, and it all takes a little bit of change and a little bit of getting used to, but that's the way the embedded lunch will work.
Will students be able to add a class now, since most people will have an extra free period in addition to maybe another free period they already have?
Yeah. So right now, all the staffing for the year and student choices is complete. So we've taken all the student requests, and we've divvied that out by each class and the number of teachers that we need, and the hiring and all that stuff is done. So we're not looking to have students add classes. We were looking to make sure we didn't have to have them give up classes. As this all proceeds, if we were to ever establish a block schedule for the long run, we'd be talking about those kinds of issues. It's a little antithetical to the idea of freeing up time for students and student stress. We certainly would have a great concern that what would happen is, we know that, when you make 9 buckets, when you make 10 buckets, our students often just want to fill that with all kinds of different things. But we want to be careful about the stress on students. So we won't be looking to have kids add classes. There's lots of reasons that kids change, maybe change from one elective to another elective. That's not the kind of thing that I'm talking about. All that process will be different given that we have a block schedule, but we'll certainly look at and consider those kinds of things.
A question I'm being asked is, seeing that we're going to have more free time or more free periods, would varsity athletes still be excused from KW classes?
Would who still be? I missed it, Kenny.
Would varsity athletes still be excused from KW?
Yeah, there's no change to that policy.
Cool.
Also, I'm seeing a lot of people are asking about like the X block still, and if that'll be like a free period for some days.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah, so let's get back to the X block and talk a little bit about that. It's something that I think is an interesting characteristic of this schedule, providing a lot of opportunities for different things. So we've put those 3 things in there as sort of the generally what opportunities are there. So staff professional development time, and again, as we continue to move through this, is going to be very important. And I think this has been a good way to actually embed some of that time within our schedule that allows for the kind of collaboration that our teachers need and use. The other thing for sure is student support. So this may be the time that you are able to go see a teacher and get some support. It may be that you need to go to some other type of more structured student support that we provide in X-Block. As we think about our what's called MTSS, our student support system, this gives us an opportunity to build out a number of different student supports. And then over time, I think other student programming as well as we adapt to this. So one of the things I mentioned earlier was this would be the place for us to do an extended advisor room. So we do extended advisor rooms for a number of reasons. It might be on a special topic, it might be because of scheduling. And so we would have built-in time for that. So those are the possibilities for it. Now, just like in the regular school day, we have students who are free ninth period. Oftentimes it might be on a non-lab day on Friday. And many of those students stick around, go to the library, find a place and do some homework for their extracurricular activities. So that would be the same. Other students go home. They might have a job that they're going to, or they might just be going home. So all that still applies when a student's done at school.
So, Paul, one of the questions was, we added this Treveon Day with 35 minutes. I think you covered a little bit of that, but just coming back to our decision to have that day as a restart day, and not just doing all block. Right. Sort of just expand on that thinking? Yeah, could you just, yeah. So student teacher contact days, we think are really important. And so this guarantees that a student will see their teacher for the most part. I know there are unusual weeks, but 3 times each week, as opposed to 2 one week and 3 times another week. And you can divide those numbers up any way you want, but it is a 20% increase, and it's a consistent way in which our students, and especially our students with executive functioning skill needs, with I think our students who are freshmen and certainly have never experienced anything like this before, that constant touching base or more consistent touching base, we think is really important. So the consistency for those students is important for all students. And then again, there are some programs where this is really important for our student support programs, such as GAP and guided study. This provides a little more consistency for that, as well as I mentioned the performing arts as being something that helps them. So we see that as a way to reconnect with students. All this sort of looks different in remote and in person and in hybrid, but we see it as a way to reconnect and set things up with students for the week, and make sure that those connections are happening. All right. So again, that's, if you look around in the literature on block schedules, you'll see a number of schools who do a pure block and don't have something like this. You'll see schools that embed a Monday and a Friday type day where you're seeing all your teachers. So there are a lot of varieties of this around, and this one we thought hit the right hit the right notes for the sort of the framework that we put in place and all those parameters and the like. Paul, with the so if we end up doing the hybrid, can you share how this block benefits us if that has to be the case, where some kids have to be on campus and some kids can't, if we have to do social distancing within the classrooms? Yeah. So I think that the way that a block schedule sort of provides more room within any individual day is what's going to help throughout any scenario that we have. We learned that in remote learning as we started with a 9-period day and then went to a block schedule because we just needed more time to be able to manage all of that. So when we talk about a hybrid schedule, we could have a 9-period day and have a hybrid schedule and just say you're in one week, you're in the next week. So it doesn't help with managing those pieces. But what it does is, with the complexity for staff and the complexity for students in managing being in and being out and what work do I have to do, this provides just a little bit more room without impacting contact time too much, but it gives them room to focus on those things, and we think it'll be best for the benefit
health and well-being of students and staff. I don't know if I quite answered the question, Denise.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Okay.
I think this embedded lunch, I think there's might be some confusion. Kids are asking, and some questions are coming in. Do they have to eat in the classroom?
No.
Yeah.
So that's not our intent. Let me change that. That's not our intent.
Right.
As we get more guidance, lunch is one of those things we have to figure out. No, that in essence is a free period, a free time for you, right? So we know that kids use their lunch right now to go see teachers. Maybe they use it to go make up a test, right? So instead of eating, they're doing that. We're hoping we have kids eat, and so it is their time. What we are going to be asking during social distancing in any type of hybrid or as we bring more and more kids back is that the cafeteria and getting food and the like, that's what has to happen in your lunch period. We can't overload anyone's space in our school as we start to figure this out.
Yeah.
So would it be recommended that more students start bringing their lunch to avoid waiting in lines at the cafeteria?
We are thinking that's likely to be one of the recommendations we put out in August. That yeah, I think it certainly could help with all of our social distancing efforts, because those lines will be where we have to keep people 6 feet apart, and it'll take more time to get through.
So
there
Paul,
will be fewer kids. There'll be fewer kids. There'll be half the kids in any lunch period that there usually are.
right. And we've done some configuration now in our classrooms, looking at how many kids can we get in a classroom under these guidelines. We've done, a lot of different spaces in the building, including the Treveon Commons, which is where our students eat. So we've got some numbers and ideas in our head. And of course that could change if things change, but our numbers right now in a classroom, can you talk a little bit about what we're thinking in terms of the numbers if we have to do a hybrid?
Yeah, well, we think, and I think this is a really good question, and I think we'll ask for everybody's patience and willingness to work with us on this. We think that we probably can manage half of the students safely within our building. That's our goal. Our goal is that we can get to half. We get a vaccine, other things start, we can start to move into getting everybody back. But in the current configuration and the way things are, we think that it's about half. So that means that it's half, and that includes the classrooms. So our classrooms that have 25, 28, up to 30, we can fit about half of the kids within those classrooms. We think that the cafeteria we can manage, and Kenny's point about bringing lunch is probably going to be part of the solution. We can manage the social distancing within those spaces with about half the kids. We might not want to start with half the kids at any one time. There are just a lot of unknowns, and our commitment for this to be a safe environment for students and staff is one that we're absolutely committed to. So it may take us a little bit of learning to make sure we're ready to take that volume of kids in, depending, again, what the guidance is and the work we keep doing for the rest of the year, rest of the summer on this.
So you shared, if we don't have a Monday, Paul, like that calendar you shared, the yearly calendar draft. So we've looked, how does that work then if there's no Monday? Like if you look at October 12th, the week just resumes, right?
The week just resumes. So October 12th is a little, this is freshman go to school night, and we're not sure what we're going to be doing with freshman go to school night. So we're having a committee that's going to look at these various pieces, but yes, so there's just no Treveon Day. So as a teacher, what I'm recognizing, and I'll go up to September 21st. What I recognize as a teacher is what I'm planning for this pattern of learning that takes place, which is Treveon Day, then blue, green, blue, green, blue, green, blue, green. So that's what the teachers need to do in order to adapt to that. We did look at having Treveon days in more places than this, and it really creates a calendar that's difficult to follow. This calendar is fairly easy to follow, and we think students will adapt to it pretty well.
So I think, we're certainly over our time, and we still have 500 people on. So that's a good sign, Paul. You're doing a great job. Okay, keep it up. But it's interesting because there's been several questions on here just about, are you thinking about starting school earlier? Are you thinking about doing the whole, some of our colleges, are starting school earlier, and then they're bringing kids home for Thanksgiving. And, a lot of that has to do with kids living in dorms versus going home to their parents. I think we talked a lot about, the beginning and the end of the school year, and then our constraints as well with some of the state guidelines and the extracurricular programs that we have that challenge us.
Yeah. So we certainly did look at it, and starting early comes with a cost. And what we're pretty convinced of is that the gain, and it is just different than college. College has some issues that are more difficult, and colleges have a number of issues that are actually easier than a high school. But we knew that when we start, so it's my assumption that we'll be starting in some type of hybrid mode. And the cost of starting earlier in August in terms of family plans, those that are in summer school and need some time off, there's a cost there that we just had to weigh against an advantage that we might get from it. And we determined, and we worked on this with the sender schools as well. So our discussions with the sender, I'm on with the sender school superintendents every week. We're going over our plans, how they match, where the mismatches are. But this was where we ended up for those reasons.
Okay. I think I'm trying to look through any more questions. I think that idea of kids that have a resource period, and how is that every day?
So
how does the resource?
So if a student, I know it's just a different model, but what we're committed to and what we'll do is when we have a student who needs resource 5 days a week, that we'll make that happen. And so that, again, sometimes happens opposite a science lab. And it sometimes can happen during a free period. So there'll be some very individual work that needs to go on for each of those students to make sure that their needs are being met. The schedules we think will be out in early August. I think that's the date we've set, Denise, is that right?
Yeah, early August.
Yeah, and there's as we've been making this, we certainly appreciate everybody's patience and on it. And that's about, we're trying to push it as soon as possible because we know that students and families love to see that, love to make sure that it looks right for the coming year. So we're going to get that out as soon as we can, but we're trying to be realistic and not set unrealistic expectations. So early August is our target.
Yeah, and I think that so with those schedules, we're going to be working through conflicts between now and August because I think our parents are well aware of the conflicts that we have.
Right.
And then some of the information that I just sent out today, Paul, included ability to get textbooks online.
Right.
And we're also looking at, trying to get that shipping free.
Yeah.
So looking at different ways that we can help assist parents just because of this.
Yeah, that's very, very important.
And
we do for any family, for any student, any family that's been through that conflict process, it's difficult. And we end up with 4,000 kids. We end up with so many schedules and all the offerings we have that we end up in that situation. It will be better this year. That's not to say we'll have zero conflicts, but with the ability to spread the master schedule out across 9 periods and not have those 4, 5, and 6 have so few classes in it, that's just going to help.
Late start, early release days.
So as of now, there are no late start, early release days in the calendar. So we have so there's a couple of different pieces of late start, early release days. One is to embed professional development within the year so that our teachers can do that work, which is so essential to keep our curriculum and our teaching methods at the highest level. So that will be embedded in XBlock in some way. It's going to be incredibly disruptive to the blue-green schedule to have that happen. And then if we're remote, as we were, a late start, early dismissal is not all that meaningful in terms of students who might need to travel. And the remote, just so everybody knows, I mean, the remote option is something that's going to be there because we're going to have to consistently provide it through the year. So that may provide some families with flexibility that they've used at times in terms of college visits and the like.
I think a couple things to wrap it up. I think Canvas, we've been really working diligently on Canvas and creating some consistency. We do have a committee of teachers that are working on creating some standards of practice for Canvas to really make it much more easy for kids. If you have 5, 6 different teachers doing kind of 5 or 6 different things, but really trying to create a minimum standard on that. And then the other question, Paul, is really masks. And we're certainly following the state guidelines, similar to if I'm walking into a grocery store.
Yeah.
We're anticipating that our kids will be wearing masks next year.
Yes.
If we're on campus, and then following all the guidelines that we follow as if we are in our own community.
Right. So those are some of the things that will continue to change. The science will continue to be updated over the next few months. And then the specific guidance from ISBE and the Illinois Department of Public Health will be what guides us on that. But as of now, absolutely. Inside the building, people will be wearing masks, and that will be something we require. We'll also be working with health services. So there's one committee that's just working on sort of that in-school health piece. So we recognize that there are many reasons to use the nurse's office. One may be, I all of a sudden feel really sick and I might have COVID. And so we have isolation, working on isolation of those students in that process, as opposed to students who just need to come down to the nurse for any of the other many reasons they do.
All right, I think there's a lot of questions here. I'm hoping that I can get back to some of these. We can't get them all. We're at like 272.
Yeah, we're going to have to do, we're going to
have another one,
up.
Right?
We're going to have another one for sure.
Yeah.
But this has been really helpful. I hope it's been helpful for students and parents, and really appreciate all the questions and the ideas and the thinking that we've heard from the community. We know that, we've been through a lot, and we know there's not a perfect solution here for us, but we have a really good solution here that's going to work well. We know its strengths, and we know some of the areas that we have to pay more attention, either to the student experience or to the staff experience. So we're working through that.
Yeah, I think there's some other questions on here, Paul, that really have to do with, how are we going to manage all the different things that we know, as we've been thinking about with our logistical team, to keep kids safe. You have our music classes, just thinking about the COVID-19 and how we are, really deeply thinking about these things. And the temperature checks and all those different things that I think we're going to be sharing a lot more information out to our families.
We will.
So they feel that they have that to know and understand, as well as to our students.
Absolutely.
What some of the expectations are.
And I think for our students, the main thing we're going to need from our students to make this work is just that sense of personal responsibility, that I'm part of a community, and this is how we operate to make it safe for everybody, whether that be masks, whether that be limiting the number of people in the cafeteria. We have to make sure that bathrooms get cleaned on a consistent basis. Hallways may need to be one-way hallways. We need to think about the locker situation. There are all these pieces that we're working through.
Yeah.
We know we're going to find good solutions to them, and it's the collaboration with students that'll really help us make it successful.
So I would just say stay tuned, parents. We'll continue to send out information. I know, Augie Fontanella has sent some information out on some of the athletics, and we are looking at ways to, as the guidelines allow us to open up to bring kids on campus for various things, with social distancing as needed. We still want to remain as remote as possible, but we know there also are a lot of activities and lanyap and certain experiences that our kids have that they may need to be on campus, but very limited, but still, trying to be creative and work through the guidelines to give our kids the best experiences they can have here, including extracurriculars in the 2021. So, we're gearing up for our clubs and all the programs we can, so Kat and Kenny can enjoy their senior year as best as possible. So thank you everyone for joining us. Like we said, there's going to be more webinars that we'll have.
And we'll post this. We'll post the slide deck on.
Yeah, we're going to post it on there. And I think a lot of the questions here that we have, we're certainly collecting those, but they'll help us frame too some of the next webinars that we do. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And for those of you that stayed on the extra, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks Kat and Kenny for being here with us and staying on a little longer. Really appreciate it. Look forward to your year next year and working with you guys in student council. And thanks, Paul, as always, for taking the time and putting this together.
Denise,
really appreciate it.
Thanks, Denise, for making sure this happened.
Yeah. Good night, everyone.
Okay. Good night. Take care.
Lives.